There we go. Hi everyone, and welcome to this morning's webinar. Before we introduce the speaker, I just want to make a couple of brief announcements. I know many of you are listening in from afar and can't attend local events or programs. That's one of the main reasons we provide this free webinar series. We host multiple webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule. We are always adding more webinars to the series, so if you're not on our email list, I encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List link that appears on the homepage. To get instant news and updates from the Johnson Center, you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, as we do often announce grant and scholarship opportunities, research opportunities, and last-minute events and new webinars there. You can find links for these on our website at www.johnson-center.org. It's not. Okay, welcome to this morning's webinar. Before we introduce the speaker, I want to make a few brief announcements. I know many of you are listening in from far away and can't attend local events or programs. That's one of the main reasons why we provide this free webinar series. We do host multiple webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule, but we are always adding more webinars to the series, so if you're not on our email list, I do encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List link that appears on the homepage. To get news and events from the Johnson Center, you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, as we often announce grant and scholarship opportunities, research opportunities, and last-minute events and new webinars there. You can find links for these on our website at www.johnson-center.org. And be sure to follow our colleagues at the Autism Research Institute, as they host their own webinar initiative and they share great resources on their website and social media pages as well. Before we begin the presentation, please do note that questions may be typed into your control panel throughout the presentation, and time permitting, they'll be addressed during the presentation. Also, for those of you who have requested copies of the presentation, we don't send out presentation slides. However, we do post recordings of all of our free webinars on the Johnson Center YouTube channel. Please search for us on YouTube and subscribe to get full access to all of our recorded webinars. We are offering certificates of attendance for this webinar, and a link to complete a short quiz will be emailed to you 1 hour after today's presentation. Once you successfully complete the quiz, you can download your certificate. Now please welcome our presenter, Sarah Stanley. Sarah is the nutrition assistant here at the Johnson Center. She holds a BS in psychology from UT Austin, has completed coursework for a BS in dietetics, and is currently completing her dietetic internship at UT Austin. She is passionate about promoting good health through good food, and she firmly believes that a lifetime of good health begins in childhood, and to promote that has created nutrition education and cooking programs for elementary schools across the country. So please join me in welcoming Sarah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So as mentioned, my name is Sarah Stanley, and I'll be speaking with you today about a very delicious and a very important topic, the importance of breakfast, from short stacks to straight A's. Right. So sorry. All right, so today we're going to be covering 4 areas. First, we're going to look at some research that has been conducted about the importance of eating breakfast, the importance of nutrients at breakfast, and how the first meal of the day can actually affect performance in school. Next, we'll be looking at what the components of a healthy breakfast are, and then we'll discuss a few strategies to help get your child on board with actually eating a healthy breakfast. And then finally, we will take a look at several recipes that can help you break out of your breakfast rut and bring more nutritious and different foods into your breakfast. All right, first on the agenda, let's go to the research. So we have all heard that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but why is it so important? What does the research actually tell us? So let's get some background information. Breakfast is the most skipped meal of the day among any age group. There may be lots of reasons for this, from just not being hungry first thing in the morning to not having enough time to make breakfast, or just forgetting about breakfast among the rush of the morning. A 1998 study found that on any given day, 8% of kids aged 1 through 7 skipped breakfast, 12% of kids aged 8 through 10 skipped breakfast, 20% of kids aged 11 through 14 skipped breakfast, and a whopping 30% of kids aged 15 through 18 skipped breakfast. So as you can see, the incidence of breakfast skipping increases significantly as the child ages. And additionally, the same study demonstrated that the rates of breakfast skipping increased significantly from 1965 to 1991. This is especially troubling as breakfast eaters have better overall diet quality than non-breakfast eaters. So what does this tell us? Whether or not breakfast is consumed has been shown to have an effect on both attention and focus. A 2007 study showed that children who ate a small breakfast, defined in this study as less than about 150 calories, which is a fairly small breakfast, or no breakfast at all, actually spent significantly more time engaged in off-task behaviors in the classroom than children who actually ate a higher energy breakfast. So this would mean that these children were, daydreaming or doodling instead of completing their actual coursework. And it's important to note that none of these children were fed a mid-morning snack. They were just relying on the energy from breakfast alone to make it through their morning. And another study in 2007 showed that the glycemic load of breakfast actually made a difference in the focus of children. A higher glycemic load was associated with less on-task behavior, and a lower glycemic load was associated with more on-task behavior. So now glycemic load is the number that estimates how much a certain food will raise blood glucose after consumption. Higher glycemic load foods are typically simple carbohydrates like white bread, and these are foods that have very little fiber and are very quickly digested. So the higher the glycemic load, the less attention and focus. And the authors also theorized that the differences in behavior may also be due to the differences in the actual composition of the meals. What they're saying is that the lower glycemic load meals tended to contain also fat and protein in addition to the carbohydrate, whereas higher glycemic load meals contain primarily carbohydrates. And we'll talk a little bit later about other reasons to include fats and proteins in breakfast. So now that we know that eating breakfast and breakfast quality actually affects attention and focus, how does this translate into academic success? Several different studies, most recently in 2016, have shown that consumption of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and dairy, and with a source of fat at breakfast, are actually associated with higher scores on standardized tests. And we know that standardized tests aren't the end-all, be-all assessment of a child's intelligence, but they are a useful tool in this setting. And these effects of the dietary quality of the breakfast were actually more pronounced in children who are at higher risk. So they would be children in a lower socioeconomic status or undernourished children. And there seemed to be a subject matter specific association as well. So math and chemistry scores were actually the most positively affected by diet quality of breakfast. So your math and your chemistry scores were higher than like the English or social studies score when they ate a better quality breakfast. And conversely, consumption of sugary foods, fast foods, and simple carbohydrates, meaning foods like white bread, refined breakfast cereals, or highly processed breakfast foods like pastries or scones were actually associated with lower scores on exams. However, regardless of quality, consistent consumption of breakfast was associated with higher scores overall. So what they're saying is that a good quality breakfast is the best thing you can do, and it's better than a low quality breakfast, but a low quality breakfast is better than nothing at all. Right, and then the glycemic index, which is very similar to the glycemic load, has been shown to have an effect on memory as well as attention. A low glycemic index breakfast, an example of this would be scrambled eggs and an apple, so that would be in our low category defined as 55 or less, would be associated with better memory and attention. A 2016 study demonstrated that consumption of fruit juice at breakfast, which is a high GI food, was actually associated with lower reading and math scores, while whole grains, which are a low GI food, were actually associated with higher reading and math scores. And a possible explanation for why glycemic index and glycemic load affect cognition is that the brain relies solely on glucose for energy under normal circumstances. And glucose comes from all carbohydrate foods. And so sudden shifts in the blood glucose can actually negatively affect brain function. And in fact, a 2010 study actually demonstrated a difference in brain composition between high glycemic index and low glycemic index breakfast. So in this study, there were two groups of participants. One group of participants who consumed rice as their staple grains, which are actually a medium glycemic index food, and another group of participants who consumed white bread as their staple grain. And the participants who consumed rice actually had a higher proportion of gray matter in their brain, which is where information processing actually takes place, and actually scored better on IQ tests when compared to the participants who consumed white bread as their staple grain. And of course, white bread is high glycemic index. And this effect was actually seen across all age groups, and it actually seemed to become more pronounced as the child grew older. So we've seen that breakfast has a large impact on your child's cognitive function. But I'm probably not telling you anything terribly surprising here. We've heard for the longest time that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But research has confirmed that our children need a healthy breakfast in order to be alert, focused, and healthy. The quality of breakfast matters so much. So let's put that into practice. Next order of business, what exactly is a healthy breakfast? So let's break down what is important to include in this meal and why. First of all, we need complex carbohydrates and fiber. These are things like starchy vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. So some examples of this would be sweet potatoes, berries, steel-cut oats, really anything from the vegetable, fruit, or grain category. The key here is to stay away from anything refined. We want to stick to whole, unprocessed fruits and vegetables and grains. They'll have lots of fiber, and fiber is just so important for satiety and for keeping us full. Fiber ensures a gradual release of glucose into the bloodstream, and this means that kids will stay full, they'll get full, and they'll stay full for a while and not be distracted in their cots by their stomach rumbling. They're going to have a sustained source of energy because the fiber actually slows down the release of that food energy. And refined grains and fruit juices will have lost most of that all-important fiber, so they will just get digested and put out into the bloodstream very quickly, and your child will be hungry again after just an hour or two. So protein foods are another essential part of breakfast. These are going to be foods like eggs, yogurt if that's tolerated by your child, nuts, nut and seed butters, beans, things like that. And having different macronutrients, which are the carbs, fat, and protein, will actually slow down digestion in the stomach. So that will keep your child fuller for longer. And a note here is that most children will actually get more protein than they need just in a daily eating. So you just want to make sure that just some protein gets included in breakfast. You don't have to increase it if your child is already eating protein. And some other notes here are to make sure you choose grass-fed meats and grass-fed dairies if you are eating dairy. It will really make a difference. And healthy fats are another essential part of breakfast. So fats will be found in a lot of different foods. So some examples would be avocado, yogurts, eggs, nut butters, animal proteins. And note that a lot of these foods also have protein. So if you just include something like an egg, you're getting both protein and fat. And so including fats are great because it actually sends a signal to the brain that you're full. And this will help breakfast to stick with you for longer. And when I say healthy fats, we want to try to stick to sources that come from whole foods. So avocados are a great choice as they are high in monounsaturated fats And they're also very high in fiber, so they're a great breakfast double hitter. You may want to try to stick to more plant-based sources of fats as opposed to animal-based sources of fats, because we already get plenty of animal-based sources of fats in our diet. And if you can get your kids to eat this in the morning, including some non-starchy vegetables like tomatoes, bell peppers, spinach, kale, really anything that they'll eat is a great way to pump up the nutrient content of the meal. You know, it's just great to get some extra added nutrients. You can choose spinach for some iron, you can throw in some kale for some vitamin K, tomatoes for some lycopene and vitamin C. Whatever your child will eat, try to include some in breakfast. Another really important factor to remember about breakfast is to try to limit sugars. As we saw earlier, too much sugar negatively affects focus and attention. So fruit juice will fall into this category. The recommended limit for daily consumption of fruit juice is 4 to 6 ounces per day. And that's not much, that's a half a cup. And that will depend on how old your child is. Even though fruit juices have been traditionally part of a breakfast, it may be best just to stick with water. And you know, remember that so many of our breakfast foods are sugary. It's a great idea to help your child to transition from sugary breakfast foods to more savory breakfast foods so that they don't fall into the habit of eating glorified dessert for breakfast. You know, our dietary habits tend to be set in childhood, so helping them to not associate breakfast with sweet foods can really help them in the long run. And one last thing to really think about with breakfast is to try to include some source of calcium. Our bodies can actually only absorb so much calcium at one time, so spreading it out throughout the day really helps with total absorption. If you can get some in the morning and some in the evening, that's wonderful. If your child is having a source of calcium with lunch and with dinner, then you don't necessarily need to include some with breakfast, as long as they're meeting the recommended amounts. And so we all know that dairy is a source of calcium, but if dairy is not tolerated, there are numerous non-dairy sources like leafy greens, white beans, dried figs, almonds, sesame seeds, even oranges have some calcium in them. And then you have your fortified foods such as non-dairy milks, cereals, and calcium-set tofu. So those are all things that we want to remember when we are putting together a breakfast. So as I alluded to earlier, quite a few breakfast foods are, nutritionally speaking, actually desserts. Like right here, Calvin is eating his chocolate frosted sugar bombs. So there are some foods that we want to watch out for, as they can be good breakfast choices or they can actually be breakfast bombs. So we want to watch out for yogurts. Some have more sugar than a Snickers bar, actually. Look for yogurts with as little added sugars as possible. So for now, just look for yogurts with less than 15 grams of total sugar in the whole serving. Milk has some naturally occurring sugars, and until the new food labels start coming out in 2018, when they will break down the amount of added sugars in a food, we just have to do a little investigation to figure out how much added sugars are. You can look in the ingredients list and see, you know, if sugar is listed, how many times it's listed. And remember that we should be looking for yogurts from grass-fed milk. And so cold cereals, like Calvin's chocolate frosted sugar bombs, are often nothing more than just sweetened refined grains that are sprinkled with some vitamins and minerals. You should be looking for whole grains as the first ingredient, preferably not corn, as we really get enough corn in the modern American diet without getting it from cereal as well. And you want to be looking for, you want to be looking for sugar listed in the ingredients list as few times as possible and as far down as possible. So here we have Kashi's 7 whole grain honey puffs. This is a good example to look at. So you have honey listed actually twice. You have sugar listed twice. One is honey and one is dried cane syrup. Those are both added sugars. However, you see them not as the first ingredient, but as the third and fourth ingredient. So that's only listed twice, and it's fairly far down. It's relatively far down the list. And you can see that the total sugars in this 1 cup serving are only 7 grams, which in the cereal world is pretty good. So Kashi gets a gold star for this one. And they have lots of different cereals that you can look at. Just you want to really assess that list and make sure that the list has foods that you recognize and that you pronounce. I recognize all those ingredients. They're not something that was created in a lab. Right. And one last thing to think about is that milk alternatives can actually be potential sugar bombs as well. So that would be things like almond milk or soy milk, hemp milk. It's best to stick with unsweetened and unflavored milk alternatives in the morning, leaving those sweetened milks as treats for later on in the day. Right, so now that we have established that children need breakfast and we know that it should be healthy, and we've talked about some of the components in that breakfast, how on earth do you actually get your child to eat it? So as parents, we have a lot on our plates, and sometimes we just have to default to what's fastest and easiest, and your child will actually eat and put in their bellies. But with a little bit of planning and a little bit of strategy, you can actually get your kids to eat a healthy breakfast. Right, so let's talk about some strategies. The most important concept when you are thinking about how to get your child to do what you want them to do is giving them ownership over it. Ownership is a really powerful strategy to get kids to do something. So a way to do that is to give them a choice of several different approved options. This way, they'll still feel some element of control over their meal. If you give a child a choice between an orange and an orange-flavored Pop-Tart, they might choose the orange-flavored Pop-Tart. But if you give your child a choice between an orange and an apple, they'll choose one of those too, and they will probably be more likely to actually eat that whole fruit instead of eating a Pop-Tart. Another option is to let them help make their meal. Research has shown time and time again that kids are more likely to eat something that they helped prepare. And this is not only great, for you in the morning because they can help make their own breakfast, but this will also be giving them some essential life skills that they are, going to need and hone over a lifetime. And then we want to give them some tools so that they will be able to make good choices. We want to set them up for success. So you can sit down with your child and brainstorm a list of different breakfasts that they will like to eat and that you approve of, and make some choices and ideas. This is probably best for older kids so that they can prepare their own breakfast without you having to approve of it or make it for them. And you can brainstorm with younger kids as well, just so that they know what they may want to have. And then another idea is to give them their own area in the cabinet or the fridge, and just prep a breakfast shelf for them so that they know that this is where they can go to get something to eat, and anything on that shelf that they can have. They can choose from those options, and they can just go and grab something and be on their way. And they don't have to bother you. They don't have to really make any hard decisions, just having a shelf that is theirs. All right, so now that we know what we're looking for in a breakfast food, let's take a look at some ideas to help you start the day off on the right foot. So first on the docket, we have some fun fruity breakfast. And this is a great way to get your kids involved in the kitchen, especially for younger kids. All you really have to do is toast some bread of your choice, whatever you as a family use, and top it with some nut or some seed butter. And for younger kids, you can set out an assortment of some fresh fruits for your kids to top in a creative way. These are just some examples. Really, the options are limitless. If you Google sandwich art, there are just so many fun, beautiful things out there. So, here we have some very good toast and a butterfly sandwich. And this actually provides a really good balance of fat, protein, and carbohydrate to help them start their day. You have the monounsaturated fats from the nut or seed butter, as well as some protein. And so when you are choosing nut butters, be sure to choose nut butters without added sugars. The best choices are going to be nut butters with only one ingredient in them, and that's just ground nuts. And then another idea is to cut a whole grain waffle in half and spread it with some nut butter and some fruit to make a waffle sandwich. That's a fun thing that you can actually take on the go as well. And if you don't want to have a grain with breakfast, you can make what I like to call banana sushi bites. You can take a banana and spread it with some nut or seed butter and top it with some ground flax seeds, some chia seeds, or hemp seeds, and cut it into small bite-sized pieces for your kids to eat as little sushi bites. They can even break out the chopsticks. Right. And you don't always have to have sweet toast. You can do savory toast as well. So for here, you just toast your bread of choice and top it with different things. So with the egg in the hole, that is actually a toasted piece of bread that you put in a skillet and you cut a hole out. It doesn't have to be a heart. And you crack an egg inside and fry it inside the bread. And this is a perfect example of carbohydrates, fat, and protein all in one piece. And then avocado toasts are another great idea to get more healthy fats and fibers. And you can top it really with whatever you would like. You can just top it with a little bit of salt, or you can get creative with it, make an alien. But you can also top it with things like a fried egg, smoked salmon, strawberries and fresh basil, a little bit of olive oil and some salt, maybe tomato, salt, and some olive oil, some feta and mint, or even just pico de gallo. Really whatever sounds good to you and your child. Right, and then one last thing is, who doesn't love pizza? We can actually have pizza for breakfast as well. All you really need to do is toast a whole grain flatbread or tortilla, whatever your family chooses, and scramble up some eggs with whatever vegetables your child will eat. Some good ideas are tomatoes, onion, bell peppers. They use mushrooms here. And then spread that on top of the flatbread. And you can slice some avocado on top or sprinkle on a little cheese if you want, and just cut that into pieces, and you have yourself a breakfast pizza. And I don't think I know a kid out there who wouldn't eat pizza for breakfast. All right, another idea for breakfast is a quick and healthy breakfast burrito. So the key here with breakfast burritos is you just want to make sure you choose a protein, you choose a fat, and you add some veggies, because you already have your tortilla, which is going to be your source of carbohydrate. Just when you're choosing a tortilla, make sure to use organic whole grain tortillas. You can use rice tortillas, whatever your family chooses. So you want to make sure to choose a protein, and examples of a protein to put in a breakfast burrito would be eggs. You can scramble some tofu, add in beans. I like black beans personally, but they can be pinto, refried. You can add in some animal protein like ham, turkey, or chicken, and then choose a fat to put on top of it, especially if you're not using something fatty like egg. I like doing avocado. It really adds a creaminess to it. You can add a little cheese, maybe a spoonful of plain unsweetened yogurt, and then add some veggies. Whatever your child will eat, again. Bell pepper, onion, kale, tomato. You can sprinkle on a little pico de gallo, and you can just wrap it up and walk out the door. You don't have to eat it right then and there. You can walk out the door. These can even be frozen, so you can make a big batch of them and freeze them and eat them whenever time is tight. So another thing for breakfast, breakfast sandwiches. There's no need to go through the drive-thru or go to your coffee shop to get a delicious breakfast sandwich. You can make one at home. If you have a panini press, that's an easy way to do a breakfast sandwich, or just use your frying pan. Just make a quick breakfast sandwich, maybe do some ham either a fried or scrambled egg, and a slice of cheese. Make sure you use a whole grain bread, whatever bread you use. And you can get bonus nutrition points for adding tomato, avocado, or even some spinach or sprouts. Just make sure you want to add a side of fruit with this. And these are also a great example of something that can be frozen and pulled out whenever time is tight. Another thought on breakfast sandwiches is you can grill a sweet sandwich. If you make a grilled PB&J, that's something that your child has likely never seen before, and that will be different and exciting for them in the morning. All you really have to do is make a peanut butter and jelly. Just use unsweetened preserves or just slice up some fruit like strawberries and just grill it on your frying pan or in your panini press to make a fun breakfast sandwich that will start their day on a different foot. So oatmeal. Oatmeal is an incredibly nutrient-dense food, but a lot of the prepackaged oatmeals that are out there are just going to be loaded with sugar. You can make your own oatmeal packets. Just get a zipper baggie, add in a half cup of either rolled or steel oats, and just add in whatever toppings you would like so you can have a pre-made oatmeal packet ready to go. Some good ideas for the pre-made oatmeal packet could be using dried unsweetened cherries and some pistachios, a teaspoon of brown sugar and some cinnamon, matcha powder, which is dried green tea, or do some sliced almonds and some dried unsweetened blueberries. And if you just want to make plain oats and top it at the time, you can also do that. You can top it with some fresh ingredients, such as a drizzle of maple syrup and some cinnamon and walnuts, some fresh sliced strawberries and almonds, bananas and walnuts, or a spoonful of nut butter and some sliced grapes. Make for some peanut butter and jelly oats. Just the key with oats is to really limit the amount of sugars you're adding and to make sure to include a source of protein and fat. And nuts and seeds will do a great job of that. So you can use pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, just something to get some protein and fat in there. But you can also do quinoa breakfast porridge. Quinoa is a great source of protein, and it's another interesting option to shake breakfast up. You can make quinoa ahead of time and then just mix it with some warmed milk and some seasonings and top it with fresh fruit, and then breakfast is done. Very simple, very quick. If you just Google quinoa breakfast porridge, there are just so many options that pop up. Some that you can make ahead, some that you have to spend some time with, but look into it. It's a really interesting option. And another interesting option are savory oatmeals. They're a fun twist. So for those, you just make plain oats and you can top it with some savory toppings. So you can do a fried egg, an avocado and tomato, or you can saute some veggies like mushrooms, onions, and peppers, and then maybe add a little goat cheese, and you've got an interesting savory oatmeal. Okay, so smoothies and smoothie bowls. These are delicious and easy breakfast, but you want to make sure of a few things with smoothies. You need to be sure to include some fat and some protein in order to make it a complete meal. If you don't, it's just going to be pureed fruits and vegetables. And even though there is some fiber in there, your child will likely be hungry well before lunchtime. So the key here is you want to include fruit, some protein, and some kind of liquid to make your smoothie. So whatever fruit you would like, whatever source of protein you like, you can try and add some nut butter, some kefir, yogurts, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds. You can use unsweetened almond milk. That will give you protein and liquid. And for the liquid, it's best to stay away from fruit juices because that's just an extra source of sugar. But it's probably best to do like yogurts or unsweetened nut milks, or really whatever you would like, or water. And smoothie bowls are something that has been showing up much more often. They're a really beautiful way to eat a smoothie. It's very visually appealing. Your child will definitely be likely to eat that. And they're the thing I really like about smoothie bowls is that they feel a lot more like a meal. Whereas with a smoothie, you're just drinking something and it doesn't really register that you've eaten. You know, your mind can really have an effect on how hungry you are. If you just gulp something down real quick, you may not remember that you've eaten and you might start grazing. Or you might feel hungry earlier than you perhaps would have if you had sat down and had this smoothie bowl. So for the smoothie bowls, you just blend your smoothie like you would and put it in a bowl and top it with other things to really pump up the protein and fat and make it more of a meal. So you can top it with things like unsweetened coconut, chia seeds. Here they put in some granola that has nuts in it, sprinkle on some nuts or seeds, some extra cut up fruit, and you can sprinkle on flax seeds, hemp seeds, grains, really whatever you would like here. You can throw in some quinoa. And this is a really beautiful example I found on a blog called Well and Good. If you just Google smoothie bowls, there will be endless sources of inspiration for you. All right, moving on to yogurts and parfaits. So yogurt parfaits are a really easy way to make breakfast feel like a treat. I don't know about you, but whenever I eat a parfait, I feel very fancy, and I'm sure kids will as well, kids do as well. So with this, you just want to try to layer in either plain or vanilla yogurt. Try to stay away from the sweetened or fruit flavored ones because you'll be adding fruit to it anyway. And layer in whatever fruit you would like to add to it. Some cereals, a little bit of granola, some nuts or seeds. And kids can really help out with this as well. It's such a fun activity to layer on the fruit and yogurt. You can use a long skinny glass to really increase the amount of layers, or you can even use a mason jar and throw a lid on it so you can just take it and go. And this is something that you could potentially make ahead as well. And some combinations for the yogurt and parfaits. So you can use pomegranate seeds with pumpkin seeds, raspberry with walnuts and granola, and some hemp seeds. Or you can go tropical with some mango and coconut and some granola. You can add flax seeds and chia seeds to include some omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-3 fatty acids are great for brain health. So including those is a great idea for a great breakfast meal. All right, so if you can set aside some time to prepare a big batch of something, perhaps on the weekend, then you can cook just once and your family can have any of these next recipes for breakfast all week. So these peanut butter and jelly muffins come from womensday.com, and they use whole wheat flour and they have small amounts of added sugar, and they actually use olive oil. So they make protein and healthy fat-packed muffins that kids and adults will both love. You can easily use gluten-free flour or swap out the peanut butter for sun butter if there are allergies or intolerances. You can try different combinations of nut and seed butters and fruits. This recipe is extremely adaptable. So this recipe uses cut grapes as well as jelly, so maybe try strawberries and strawberry preserves. And when you're buying preserves or jelly, remember to look for ones with no added sugar. Or you can even make your own so you know how much sugar has gone into those preserves. It's fairly easy to do. Right, so another make-ahead option is to bake some oatmeal. There are innumerable recipes online, so just choose one that your kids will like. Just remember, if you are gluten-free, look for gluten-free oats. Be careful about cross-contact. And be sure your child can tolerate oats. Not all children can. But baked oatmeal is a really great option. So you can either make it in a muffin tin for more of like a muffin shape, or in a casserole so you can spoon some out onto a plate. So this one right here is sort of a pumpkin spice one, very fall appropriate. And this one here is berries and nuts, which is just great anytime. Just remember to try to include some fat and protein in there. So if, for example, the recipe doesn't include eggs, Try to include some nuts or seeds, or have some protein on the side just to make sure that you get that complete meal. And another option is trying out a savory breakfast bread pudding. This is a recipe from womensday.com, and this will get your kid to eat some delicious leafy greens. And you'll get a good dose of protein from the eggs as well. So you can try it with gluten-free whole grain bread or just regular whole grain bread. Add some uncured ham, and use whatever vegetables that your kids will like. They used Swiss chard in here. You can also try kale or spinach or bok choy to get some calcium. And this you can easily make ahead and just eat on all week. And this recipe is very adaptable as well. So you can, if you don't eat ham, you can swap out whatever you would like to put in there, turkey or vegetarian sources. You can throw in some beans in there. It's very adaptable. Right, and then these next recipes are going to look at some things that actually take a little bit more time. So they may be good for more of a weekend treat as opposed to an everyday breakfast. So this is an interesting recipe that comes from ohmyveggies.com. I had never thought of baked potatoes as a breakfast food, but baked sweet potatoes just make the perfect breakfast food. You can actually prep this one ahead of time. All it really does is you bake the sweet potatoes, and there is a quinoa granola that you make ahead of time. And so you bake the sweet potatoes, and then you cut them in half and top it with some plain yogurt and some fruit in that quinoa granola. And this recipe is great. It has protein from both the yogurt and the quinoa granola as well, and then you have the fiber from the potatoes and from the quinoa also, and you've got fat coming from the quinoa granola, and if you use, not non-fat yogurt from the yogurt as well. You can skip the yogurt if need be, or use coconut or almond yogurt, whatever your family needs to do. And so this next one is called red flannel hash, and that might be somewhat unfamiliar to those of us that live outside New England. It's a very traditional New England dish. So it's a traditional hash, but it includes some beets in there. And the inclusion of beets really, really ups the nutritional profile of this dish. Beets are just nutrition superstars. They're high in folate, they're high in manganese, vitamin C, and they have tons of beneficial phytochemicals that can really help to reduce inflammation and to stimulate liver and kidney function. I realize that beets may be a bit of a hard sell to some kids, but when beets are roasted, it really brings out the sweet flavors and makes them so much more palatable to kids. And I mean, besides, look at how beautiful that dish looks. And if you can get away with it, you can add in some leafy greens as well. Adding in some Swiss chard or kale would be great with this dish. And if you are using meat in here, always try to use grass-fed meats. And with the eggs, use pastured eggs. So this is a fun twist on a regular pancake recipe. It's a sweet potato and pecan flapjack. It's a fun way to shake up the weekend breakfast. So this recipe comes from cookinglight.com and actually uses cornmeal. And with the cornmeal, you always want to try to find organic and stone ground cornmeal. If you don't use stone ground cornmeal, you will lose some of those nutrients from the whole grain. So always look for stone ground organic cornmeal. And it also uses mashed orange sweet potato, and it really makes a delicious creamy pancake. And this recipe can very easily be adapted to be gluten-free and dairy-free as well. Just use gluten-free flour and then a dairy-free milk. And so with this one, make sure to top with some fresh fruit and some more pecans to really increase the protein and fat in this dish. Because pecans are a great source of protein, unsaturated fats, as well as a trace element called selenium. And with this one, try try to limit the amount of syrup that goes on there. But if you do use syrup, try to use maple syrup. All right, next one. I know what you're thinking. My kid will never eat a tofu scramble, but I promise they're really not that texturally different from eggs. Some kids may not even be able to tell the difference. And this recipe that comes from theminimalistbaker.com is a really great recipe that's flavorful and very visually appealing. And switching it up every now and again with different foods and not having eggs every morning will really help your kids to get a variety of different nutrients, which is so important. And with this recipe and with tofu in general, just be sure to choose organic and try to choose calcium set tofus, because when tofu is calcium set, it's a great source of calcium. That's non-dairy and vegan. Right, so the next one is another twist on pancakes and waffles. So this buckwheat waffle recipe comes from cookieandcake.com, and it's a great alternative to wheat-based recipes. Even though it has wheat in the name, buckwheat is not actually wheat. It's gluten-free, low glycemic index, and high in trace minerals such as manganese, copper, and magnesium. And even though buckwheat has some protein, try pairing it with a protein source. So maybe sprinkle on some nuts. Pecans would be great on this. Or and top with some fruit. And you don't have to use this one in a waffle maker. You can make it into pancakes as well. And as always, go easy on the syrup. All right. So there will definitely be mornings in everyone's lives where there's just no time to cook anything. And that's okay. We don't have to cook breakfast every single morning, as long as we have those options on hand to carry us through those mornings and those weeks when just everything in your life is happening. So here are some ideas for some grab-and-go options. So some cold cereals are going to be better than others. These are some of the brands to look out for. So cashew cereals are generally pretty nutritionally good. They will tend to be low in sugar, have a short ingredients list, and are appealing. Plain Cheerios are a great choice. Vans cereals are typically pretty good, as well as Barber's cereals. And so these cereals, they tend to be low in added sugars, but as always, read the ingredients list, look at the nutrition label. There are always ones that may have more sugar than others. And I also like these cereals because they're not corn-based. As Americans, we just get so much corn in our diet that it's good to branch out a little bit. I like cashew a lot because they use grains in there that a typical American never eats. Like there's triticale in there. I don't think any American really eats that on a regular basis. It's just great to branch out and get different foods to really increase the different nutrients that your kids are eating. And Bio Kids cereals, they tend to be corn-based, but it's organic and it's non-GMO, so it'll be a better choice than other corn-based cereals. And another good option is actually a Trader Joe's cereal. It's called Trader Joe's Golden Flax Organic Cereal. And really, any puffed grain will be good as well because it's just that puffed grain. So an example would be puffed brown rice. Right. And another option are the chia pod oats. So the chia pod oats are going to be chia seeds mixed with some fruit puree and some oats. And those are pretty complete. They have the oats. The chia seeds are fairly high in protein and will have some healthy fats in there. And another option, it's actually a frozen option. It's called Good Food Made Simple, and they make bowls. So there are a lot of different options out there. A lot of them have eggs in them, and you always want to read the label to make sure that, it's food that you actually want to eat. But what is really good about them is that there's nothing added to them. It's just the food itself. So for example, they have an egg and I want to say sausage bowl, and it's the ingredients list reads like it should. It's just good food made simple, hence their name. So it's eggs and sausage and whatever vegetable, and it's just simple and easy, and you can just heat it up and go. And then Siggy's yogurt, I really like Siggy's yogurt because, for one thing, it's grass-fed, and they pride them. It's actually printed on their container that they have more protein than sugar. It's a thicker style yogurt, so it may take some getting used to, but it's really delicious, and it has low sugar, and they actually come in those yogurt tubes now that kids really love. So that would be a good choice for a grab-and-go breakfast. And it will have protein, fat, and carbs in one little tube, but you probably want to add something else to it because especially the yogurt tubes are fairly low in calories. And then Bobo's oat bars are a great choice for a granola bar type thing. So they have lots of different flavors. I believe they're gluten-free, and you just want to make sure you have some source of protein with that. All right, so some final thoughts that I want to leave you with was that the research was fairly conclusive that skipping breakfast leads to poor performance. So try to get your child to eat breakfast if at all possible. However, you never want to force your child to eat. Some people are just not hungry first thing in the morning, and that's okay. Just be sure that they have a healthy snack for when they do get hungry, or pack something to go so if they get hungry like on the bus ride or in their first class, that they can have something ready for them to eat. And then remember that the quality of food matters so much. A high quality breakfast is going to be better than a low quality breakfast, which is better than no breakfast at all. Remember that you are what you eat. All right, so this is the research that I had presented in the earlier slides. And so now we will go to some questions. Right, we've got just a few minutes here. So the first one, so what are the most important factors to consider when preparing a breakfast? So I would say that fiber, protein, and fat, those are the three things that just every breakfast absolutely has to have. I presented it a lot as carbohydrates, but remember that the type of carbohydrate really, really matters. So you always want to make sure that you have your whole carbohydrate. So it would be whole fruits, whole vegetables, and whole grains. That is what's going to give you the fiber. And the protein and the fat will just give that breakfast just staying power. So these three things together will work together to give you a really satisfying breakfast that will help your child stay focused in class and keep them going all the way through lunchtime. So another question. I've tried and tried to get my kids to like vegetables, but they just won't eat any. Do you have any advice? So my advice is just keep trying. You know, don't force them to try it, just present it as an option to them. Research tells us that it may take 20 or more exposures to a food to get a child to accept it. You can try different ways of preparing it. Like I said before, roasting really helps with a lot of vegetables that aren't that pleasing to kids, like roasting Brussels sprouts really, really helps. Roasting beets, roasting carrots. Roasted carrots are delicious. Even mashed cauliflower. Mashed cauliflower is very similar to mashed potatoes, so that could be a different way to approach it. You can ease your child into it. You know, you put a bunch of butter on there at first to ease them into the carrots and then cut back on the butter. Just don't ever force your child to eat something. Offer it in a no-pressure way. And remember that tastes will change as people get older. You know, you might not like something when you're 5, but you might love it when you're 10. Trying new things when your child gets older, you never know, they might love it. But if there are actually severe food selectivity issues, you may want to work with an expert in the field. And if you would like a reference to a therapist who may be able to help, you can email us at info@johnson-center.org. All right, and then one final question that I'll take. My child is allergic to eggs and is gluten-free and dairy-free. What are some good options for breakfast for her? So a lot of the things that I presented in this presentation can be adapted. So you don't always have to have eggs for breakfast. There are lots of gluten-free alternatives and dairy-free alternatives. But I would say that oats, if they're tolerated, would be a great choice. They're easy, they're simple. Just add some hemp, flax, chia seeds, nuts and fruit, whatever can go in that bowl. A breakfast burrito would be actually a great option, especially because you can freeze those. You just want to use a gluten and egg-free tortilla. And I would put in some sweet potatoes, avocado, and black beans with salsa. Don't freeze avocado, though. It's not going to be the same. But you can roast some sweet potatoes and put some black beans in a tortilla, wrap it up, and freeze it. And then when you are ready to eat it, you can thaw it and heat it and top with some avocado and some salsa. And that will be a great way to get your protein and your fiber and your healthy fats in there. And smoothies can also be a good option, as well as some prepackaged options. And also, I mean, who says that breakfast has to be traditional breakfast foods? I think that leftovers make a great breakfast food. I wouldn't go so far as to say you should eat, leftover pizza for breakfast. Maybe make your breakfast pizza instead. But there are lots of cultures out there that don't have defined breakfast foods. Some cultures will eat soup for breakfast. So just think outside the box. Whatever your child will actually want to eat, just offer it to them. Because, like I said, a good quality breakfast is better than a low quality breakfast is better than no breakfast at all. All right, so I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. I had a lot of fun. It's made me very hungry. It's almost lunchtime where I am, so I'm going to go eat some lunch. And if you have any other questions, I'll also respond to the questions I didn't get a chance to answer. Or if you would like a link to any of the recipes presented here, please feel free to email us at info@johnson-center.org and visit the archives of all of our wonderful webinars on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Johnson Center. You'll be able to rewatch this one here and look through all of our other wonderful webinars. All right, thank you so much.